Good morning, crime community. I'm here to read out another chapter of Poisoner in Chief. It's called We Must Always Remember to Thank the CIA. Under a staircase in a faded Moscow apartment block, a CIA officer wearing a trench coat bent down into a semi-darkness and reached behind a radiator. He found what he was looking for, a matchbox hanging from a metal hook. Inside were miniature photos of top secret documents taken by Colonel Oleg Penkovsky, the high ranking Soviet intelligence officer ever to become an American spy. Penkovsky had been betraying Soviet secrets for more than a year. Seconds after the officer bent to retrieve his dead drop on November 2nd, 1962, disaster struck. Soviet police agents jumped from the shadows and arrested him. Since he was officially employed by the State Department, he was protected by diplomatic immunity and punished only by expulsion from the Soviet Union. Penkovsky was tried, convicted of treason, and executed. Some CIA post-mortems on Penkovsky's loss focused on the devices he had been given to use. His camera was commercially available, Minox III, small enough to fit into a fist and equipped to take sharp images, but unsuited to covert use because it required two hands. The matchbox he used to dead drop his film was serviceable but primitive. His Panasonic radio allowed him only to receive messages, not to send any, and the messages could be deciphered only with the help of a code pad. The Technical Services Division looked amateurish, stuck in the pad, able to conduct audio surveillance and produce simple items like false documents, but not actively looking for ways to use cutting-edge technology in covert operations. For the CIA, losing Penkovsky came after a series of other humiliations, most notably the U-2 fiasco, the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion, and the failure to predict construction of the Berlin Wall. And if that were not enough, the Bay of Pigs failure had led President Kennedy to fire Allen Dulles, the only director of Central Intelligence many officers had ever known. The new director, John McCone, had been chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission and was an outsider to CIA culture. McCone began by shaking up the team that he had been responsible for the CIA recent failures. Early in '62, he arranged early retirement for Richard Bissell, the deputy director for plans who had presided over the Bay of Pigs debacle. To take his place, McCone elevated Richard Helms, Gottlieb's steadfast patron and protector. A few months later, Helms reshuffled the Technical Service Division, and when the dust settled, Gottlieb was its deputy chief. His assignment was to bring it into new age. TSD leadership was mountains to climb, recalled one officer who served there in the 1950s. It was technology, which was pretty bad. When Gottlieb joined the CIA in '51, technical services offers numbered in the dozens. By the time he became deputy chief 11 years later, there were several hundred. The division's headquarters was not at the new CIA campus on Langley, Virginia, but in a wonderfully historic complex at 2430 East Street in Washington, near the Lincoln Memorial. It had been the original CIA headquarters before it had been housed the Office of Strategic Services. The complex was spacious, giving Gottlieb room in the East Building for his audio operations staff, in the South Building for secret writing, and in the Central Building for disguise operations. Many other technical services officers were based at CIA stations overseas. Most often were called upon to trap a phone line, bug an office, install a hidden camera, or turn a can of brick into a container for hiding microfilm. Gottlieb wanted to offer more. He recognized that technology was becoming steadily more important in covert operations as he set out to hire engineers, chemists, artists, printers, and all manner of craftsmen. Rather than recruiting from Ivy League universities, he concentrated on technical schools and state colleges. He brought ambitious students to Washington for internships. When he bumped up against a hiring ceiling, he would offer temporary contracts that could be indefinitely extended. Typically, there were technical recruits had shown a childhood penchant for tinkering that eventually turned into engineering and hard science degrees, one technical service officer later wrote. They were often the first and only member of their family to attend college, and many came from rural communities in the Midwest and Southwest. They arrived at the CAA seeking technical opportunities and adventure. It did not take long before the newly minted engineers began delighting in calling the operations officers liberal arts majors. The engineers, for less than flattering terms, summed up both case officers' educational background and imprecise, unscientific nature of agent recruiting and handling. During Gottlieb's years in the top echelons of technical services, its officers prided themselves on doing more than simply waiting for gadget orders. They tried to help operations officers imagine new ways to penetrate enemy defenses, uncovering secrets, and protect agents. Are Soviet diplomats in a Latin American country discussing sensitive matters under a tree in their embassy compound? No problem. Technical services developed a tiny microphone and transmitter, encased them inside a projectile, and designed a gun to fire the projectile into the accommodating tree. Does an agent find covert photography of documents too risky? Technical Services invented a sub-miniature camera with 4 sub-millimeter lenses that could take up to 100 pictures, despite being small enough to conceal in a pen, watch, or cigarette lighter. Does a spy say he will take risks only if he is given an L pill so he can commit suicide if caught? Technical Services made a pair of eyeglasses with such a pill hidden in one of the simple tips so that if the agent was trapped and brought in for interrogation, he could be trained to be chewing nervously on the glasses while he was actually biting on the L pill. Whenever counterintelligence officers needed guidance on what drugs to use in an interrogation, Gottlieb was the obvious person to consult. When the Soviet intelligence officer Yuri Nosenko defected to the West in '62, the CIA counterintelligence chief, James Jesus Angleton, suspected that he was a fake defector sent to disrupt the CIA. Nosenko was held captive at a safe house in Maryland for 3 years and subjected to almost every torture Gottlieb had ever devised in an effort to force him to confess. He endured 17 rounds of intense questioning. Electrodes were strapped to his head. For much of his 1,277 days in captivity, he was locked into a small, windowless concrete cell. Later, the CIA concluded that he had been a genuine defector and that the way he was treated went beyond the bounds of propriety and good judgment. At the time, though, Gottlieb and his team were thought to have proven their value once again. Among the many special interests that Gottlieb pursued at Technical Services was graphology for handwriting analysis. Some Europeans took graphology seriously, but most Americans dismissed it as unreliable. Gottlieb was an exception. He was always looking for new or little understood tools that might help him peer into human mind. In '58, while he based in Germany, he returned periodically to Washington. He consumed a special rich study of handwriting analysis that became MK Ultra Subproject 83. Graphologists will categorize a number of handwriting samples according to the degree to which these specimens tend to reveal personality dimensions, he wrote. Other experts in handwriting analysis, including geographologists, handwriting identification experts, and experimental psychologists, will examine the above groups of handwriting samples, determine any identifiable characteristics. The sub-project perfectly reflected the range of Gottlieb's imagination. His life's work had been the search for exotic knowledge that could be used in the service of covert action. While Subproject 83 was underway, he wrote a memo that set goals for future research in graphology and secured it as part of the CIA toolkit. He conducted a detailed study of handwriting analysis. More important, however, he had assembled data making it possible to design relevant and meaningful research in the useful and applicability of handwriting analysis to investigate activities. In addition, he will begin to develop technical surveys Another conversational and misunderstood areas. These will include not only necessary in the next year, a revision and adaptation of material already developed on deception techniques, magic, sleight of hand, signals, etc. B, psychic phenomena and extrasensory perception. C, subliminal perception. D, hypnosis. And E, true serums. F, expressive moments, body type, which facial characteristics, etc. By the early 1960s, Gottlieb was doing far more than conceiving and overseeing extreme experiments in deep secrecy. He helped to run a mini empire with outposts around the world. That pulled him away from MK Ultra, so did his own rising doubts. Gottlieb received MK Ultra as a search for ways to control the human mind. For years, he pursued that quest to the edge of science and beyond. His imagination was fed by regular LSD use. By his own estimate, he dosed himself at least 200 times and never hesitated to test anything he could imagine. Nonetheless, he was in the end of a scientist. Years of relentless MK Ultra experiments pushed him inexorably towards an unwelcome conclusion. There was no way to take control of another person's mind. The first sign that Gottlieb was beginning to give up on MK Ultra, so far as known, came in the memo entitled Scientific and Technical Problems in Covert Action Operations, which he wrote in 1960. It remained classified, but a later CIA report contains excerpts. One sentence leaps out: as of 1960, no effective, excuse me, as of 1960, no effective knockout pill, truth serum, aphrodisiac, or recruitment pill was known to exist. This admission that years of MK Ultra experiments had failed to produce the breakthrough of Gottlieb's dreams marked the beginning of his acknowledgement that his search had been in vain. Other MK Ultra officers reached the same conclusion. The possibility of creating a Manchurian candidate is a total psychological impossibility, said David Rhodes, who spent several years distributing CIA grants as president of the Society for Investigation of Human Ecology. But it is intriguing. It is a lot of fun. Gottlieb continued to direct MK Ultra, perhaps his first years back from Germany, but it operated on a greatly reduced scale. Many of its sub-projects ended. Experiments with LSD were curtailed. No more funds were spent for research into electric shock or sensory deprivation. With the use of enough powerful drugs and other extreme measures, Gottlieb had found it impossible to destroy a human mind. He had discovered no way, however, to embed a new personality into the resulting void, to open the wiped away mind to control by an outsider. Even as MK Ultra wound down, it remained one of CIA's most powerful, closely guarded secrets. John McCone learned of it after becoming director in 1961. In an effort to curtail and professionalize it, he carried a new directive for science and technology and ordered it to take over the behavioral work of technical services had been doing. This prospect naturally disturbed Gottlieb and his patron Helms. They managed to persuade McCone that he should protect MK Ultra from prying eyes, even though with top secret clearance, it was not moved into the new directorate. Instead, he remained in the Covert Action Directorate under Helms's friendly supervision. The bureaucratic victory ensured that the story of MK Ultra's past would remain tightly held. The question of its future remained to be resolved. McCone did not share his predecessor's fascination with the idea of mind control. If there were to be any further experiments in this area, he decreed they should be conducted by the new Science and Technology Directorate, not by Gottlieb and his Technical Services Division. MK Ultra had been Gottlieb's child. He designed it, helping Richard Helms draft the memo to Allen Dulles that brought it into being in 1953, conceived the 149 sub-projects that pushed its mind control research into hitherto unimagined realms and monitored the results of extreme experiments at detention centers in 4 continents. In a decade of work, he had failed to produce a true serum, a technique to program the human mind, or a potion to work any kind of psychic magic. Acting in his growing suspicion of MK Ultra, McCone directed the CIA's Inspector General J.S. Ehrman to find out what it was and what it did. Ehrman submitted his report on July 26, 63. A note at the top said it was prepared in one copy only, and viewing it as unusual sensitivity. MK Ultra activity is concerned with the research and development of chemical, biological, and radiological materials capable of employment in clandestine operations to control human behavior. The report begins. Over the 10-year life of this program, many additional avenues of the control of human behavior has been designated by TSD management as appropriate to investigation under the MK Ultra Charter, including radiation, electroshock, various fields of psychology, psychiatry, sociology, and anthropology, graphology, harassment, substances, and paramilitary devices and materials. The report does not name Gottlieb or his deputy, Robert Lashbrook, but refers to them. These are just two individuals in TSD who have full substantive knowledge of the program. Most of that knowledge is unrecorded. Both are highly skilled, highly motivated, and professionally competent individuals. The final phase of testing MK Ultra materials involves the application of unwitting subjects in normal life settings. The MK Ultra program director has, in fact, persuaded close supervision of the testing program, makes periodic visits to the sites. Then, after assessing Gottlieb's testing program, the Inspector General researches four conclusions. A. Research in the manipulation of human behavior is considered by many authorities in medicine and related fields to be professionally unethical. Therefore, the reputations of professional participants in the MK Ultra programs are on occasion in jeopardy. B. Some MK Ultra activities raise questions of legality implicit in the original charter. C. A final phase of the testing of MK Ultra products places the rights and interests of U.S. citizens in jeopardy. D. Public disclosure of some human aspects of MK Ultra activity could induce serious adverse reaction to U.S. public opinion, as well as to stimulate offensive and defensive action in this part of foreign intelligence services, weighing possible benefits of such testing against the risk of compromise and the result damage to CIA has led the Inspector General to recommend termination of the phase of the MK Ultra program. The report even went on to suggest a series of steps to bring MK Ultra under tighter control. Its contracts should be audited. Gottlieb should file regular updates describing his work. Project managers should update their notability incomplete files. The conclusion is understated but profound. A redefinition of the scope of MK Ultra is now appropriate. Gottlieb was directed MK Ultra with only the loosest supervision. Suddenly, he faced the prospect of oversight. Yet sharing the secrets of MK Ultra was unthinkable. How should he respond? A more combative bureaucratic might have chosen to resist the Inspector General's report, defend the essential value of MK Ultra, and insist that it be allowed to continue functioning with its opaque shroud. Instead, the true Buddhist fashion, Gottlieb not only embraced the Inspector General's report, but suggested that its critique of his work was not deep enough. His response may be read as both an admission of defeat and a protective measure. Instead of redefining the scope of MK Ultra, he suggested that the program fade away entirely. It has become increasingly obvious over the last several years that the general area had less and less relevance to current clandestine operations. The reasons are many and complex, but two of them are perhaps worth mentioning briefly. In the scientific side, it made very clear that these materials and techniques are too unpredictable, in effect, on individual human beings under specific circumstances to be operationally useful. Our operations officers, particularly the emerging group of new senior operations officers, have shown a discerning, perhaps commendable distaste for using these materials and techniques. and seemed to realize that in addition to moral and ethical considerations, the extreme sensitivity and security constraints of such operations effectively rule them out. Over the final months of 63, MKUltra slowed towards dignified expiration. Remaining sub-projects ended and were not renewed. Apartments in New York and San Francisco in which victims had been learned for drug experiments were closed. Gottlieb focused on other work. He was reinventing himself. The drug experimenter and poison maker became a designer of spy tools. When Gottlieb addressed the incoming class of CIA recruits in 63, he referred only obliquely to MKUltra. I remember him saying that the Soviets were doing a lot of research into mind control and that we needed to keep up with them. One of the recruits later recalled, as far as anyone knew, that was what he did, and that was the justification for all his work. It seemed quite reasonable. Nobody thought, what a horrible thing. It didn't get any sense of a mad scientist or someone who was off the rails or anything like that. For 10 years, Gottlieb directed systematic, intense, and far-reaching research into mind control. Finally, he and his comrades were forced to face their cosmic failure. The research had shown them that mind control is a myth, that seizing another person's mind and reprogramming it is impossible. The ride of a lifetime was ending. There would be nothing like MKUltra again. Gottlieb had every reason to believe that he had put his wild adventure behind him. That's the end of that chapter, and the next one is called Let This Die With Us. We'll begin that on another day. If you believe there's any truth in what I'm saying here, please like and subscribe and share. I would love to earn your subscription. Have a good day.